Marc Márquez canceling his holidays is not about discipline. It is not about professionalism. It is not even about injury recovery. It is about a truth the entire paddock refuses to speak aloud. Ducati's 2026 project is incomplete without the only rider who truly understands the GP25's ceiling. Every factory pretends testing is a collective effort. It never is. Testing belongs to the rider who bends a prototype to his will. Testing belongs to the rider whose instincts rewrite data. Testing belongs to the rider who does not just ride a machine, but infects it with his DNA. That rider in 2025 was not Bagnaia, not Martin, not Bezzecchi, not Acosta, not even Alex Marquez. It was Marc. The GP25 was an unstable creature, sensitive front, high-load aero, violent acceleration, punishing trail braking. And yet Marc didn't just master the bike, he weaponized it. 11 wins, 14 sprints. Title locked with 5 rounds left. Ducati found its peak because Marc forced the machine to reveal itself. Now he's injured again, back to the shadow of 2020, back to metal, screws, and fear. But instead of resting, he chooses pain. Because he knows Ducati's 2026 destiny starts at Sepang. And without him, they walk blind. It begins in silence. Not the roar of engines, not the chaos of a start grid. Silence, a cold rehab room, fluorescent lights, elastic bands, controlled agony. Marc Márquez, right shoulder taped, scarred arm trembling, repeating the same brutal sequence he's done since Jerez 2020. Except this time, he's not racing time. He's racing an era. The 2026 season isn't just another year. It is Ducati's consolidation moment. The year their empire decides whether Marc becomes their nuclear core or a brief comet that burned bright and left black smoke behind. The year Pecco fights for survival. The year Bezzecchi becomes a full-blade Aprilia weapon. The year KTM begs Acosta to stay loyal. The year Yamaha gambles its final dignity on Toprak's arrival. And the year every factory looks ahead to 2027, the 850cc reset that will wipe the slate and rewrite power. But before any of that, there is a single battlefield that determines everything. Sepang test, February. And the man who conquered 2025 is not guaranteed to be there. The crash with Bezzecchi in Mandalika didn't just send Marc off the bike. It sent Ducati into a cold sweat, ligament damage, bent screws in the humerus. A repeat of the nightmare Ducati hoped they had escaped when they signed him after Mugello 2024. Marc didn't gamble this time. No heroic remounting, no pushing through pain, no unnecessary drama. Title in hand, he stepped aside for Pirro and Bulega, watching the final rounds of 2025 from a couch instead of a grid slot. But injury time is not idle time. When most riders disconnect, Marc locked himself into recovery. When the paddock whispered, "No rush," he heard it as an insult. When the world told him to take holidays, he canceled them. And that is the opening image of 2026. Not Ducati celebrating a champion. Not Aprilia sharpening its claws. Not KTM wondering how to fix race pace. Not Yamaha begging for relevance. But Marc Márquez refusing sunlight so he can feel the burn of resistance bands digging into his skin. He knows what Valencia revealed. Ducati's engineers spent 2 days searching for the reference that only Marc provides. They had Pecco. They had Alex. They had Dijon Antonio. They had data. They had laps. But they didn't have the ceiling. The GP26 prototype felt directionally good, but no one trusted the numbers because the one man who could break the bike, bend it, and expose its weaknesses wasn't there. Ducati's empire felt strangely mortal without its emperor. And that is the silent truth. They need him in Sepang, not for speed, not for ego, but because the GP26 is the first bike built with his fingerprints. Without Marc, their project is data. With Marc, it becomes destiny. Who carries destiny into 2026 and who carries doubt? Comment below. Rehabilitation runs parallel to politics, and right now the Ducati paddock is a storm disguised as calm. Pecco Bagnaia walks into 2026 knowing he no longer controls the narrative of Bologna. He once was the golden child, the chosen champion. Ducati shaped the GP22, GP23, and GP24 around his rhythm-friendly, corner-clean, stability-first philosophy. Then the GP25 arrived. It demanded chaos, It demanded violence. It demanded an animal that hunts without hesitation. And that was Marc. Pecco never bonded with the bike. His braking entry felt vague. His front load felt unpredictable. His corner exit traction faded under high aero stress. He complained, he adapted, he tried, he survived. But he never evolved into the shape the machine wanted. Meanwhile, Marc evolved instantly. He rode the GP25 like a scalpel dipped in gasoline. The harder the bike fought him, the sharper he became. Ducati realized the truth mid-season. The fastest way to develop a bike wasn't stability, but volatility. Marc unlocked paths the engineers never modeled because he rode beyond the simulation. So now, in 2026, Ducati's internal compass points toward the alien. Marc knows this. Pecco knows this. The factory knows this. The paddock knows this. Only the politeness of corporate PR keeps the tension hidden. But behind closed doors, the stakes are sharp. If Marc arrives to Sepang at 95% fitness, Ducati shapes the GP26 around his DNA. If he misses Sepang, Pecco regains leverage. If both attend, the truth becomes unavoidable. Ducati's direction follows the man who breaks the limit, not the man who maintains it. Meanwhile, Aprilia smells blood. Bezzecchi didn't just rise in 2025, he evolved into Aprilia's blade. Silverstone, Portimao, Valencia, his victories weren't opportunistic, they were declarations. Bezzecchi became the only rider who thrives in chaotic rhythm, the kind of rhythm that has historically destabilized Marc. Aprilia wants Marc present in Sepang for one reason, to measure their weapon against the maximum standard. Not Pecco, not Martin, not KTM's incomplete package. Marc is the ruler of the rhythm, and if he isn't fully present, Aprilia cannot know how sharp their Wolfpack really is. KTM watches this from their volcano, frustrated. Acosta carries their future, but not yet their results. 40 Premier Class starts, 0 victories, explosive Saturdays, fading Sundays. KTM's problem is simple and cruel. Their race pace collapses after lap 12. No aero stability, no rear grip longevity, no consistent delta. Acosta is a once-in-a-generation talent, stranded inside a bike that betrays him in the final third. They need to know if the GP26 reset gives Marc another year of dominance or if Ducati's window is closing. Because if the Ducati empire looks irresistible again, Acosta's conversations shift. Then there's Yamaha, the lost kingdom. Toprak arrives in 2026 not to save them, but to audit them. He needs Marc in Sepang because testing against a diluted reference is worthless. If Marc misses Sepang, Yamaha cannot measure how far Toprak actually is from the throne. Everything funnels back to a single choke point, Marc's shoulder, Marc's screws, Marc's decision to endure pain instead of beaches. And Ducati? They smile outwardly, they panic inwardly, because one truth sits under every discussion. A prototype without its ultimate rider is a map without a north. Is Ducati controlling their destiny, or is destiny starting to control Ducati? Comment below. The paddock pretends Marc's injury is routine. It's not. Ligament damage is not predictable. Shoulder recovery is never linear. And metal screws bending inside the humerus? That's the ghost of Jerez 2020 returning with a knife. Marc hides it well. He trains, he sweats, he posts controlled optimism. But inside the Ducati garage, fear hums like static, because they've seen this movie. And the sequel is always darker. When Marc misses testing, the consequences aren't mild. They're seismic. Without Marc at Sepang, the GP26 loses its development spear. Pecco gains political weight and resets bike philosophy. Engineers get trapped in Pecco-friendly geometry and aero decisions. Ducati fractures into two microfactions. Stability camp, Pecco; aggression camp, Marc. Aprilia gains confidence. KTM avoids direct comparison. Yamaha cannot measure Toprak's new world. Liberty Media wants this. They don't want runaway champions. Without Marc, the grid looks unpredictable. In other words, a single rider absence destabilizes the entire championship ecosystem. This is not worship. This is structural reality. Marc has become the sun of modern MotoGP testing. When he rises, every factory calibrates around his light. When he disappears, everyone loses their shadow. Pecco's collapse in 2025 wasn't just about form. It was about losing psychological ground to the rider who changed Ducati's identity. Marc's dominance forced Ducati to evolve toward intensity, unpredictability, leaning onto aero load shifts and violent mid-corner direction changes. Meanwhile, Marc's absence at Valencia revealed something terrifying. Without him, Ducati's data contradicted itself. Alex Marquez felt one thing, Pecco felt another. Di Giannantonio felt something else entirely, and the engineers felt uncertainty. The GP26 prototype behaved like a half-tamed beast waiting for the one rider whose aggression forces clarity. Aprilia sees this. They smell vulnerability in Bologna. Bezzecchi whispers, Martin observes, Rivola sharpens his political blades. They know that if Marc limps into Sepang, the door to early season disruption opens. KTM sees opportunity too, not to beat Ducati, but to delay their evolution long enough for Acosta to stay untempted by Italian colors when 2027 arrives. And Yamaha? They pray Marc isn't ready, because Toprak needs chaos to measure himself. A weakened Marc is still the ultimate measuring stick. This is the collapse phase. Not the collapse of a rider, but the collapse of the illusion that Ducati is invincible. A single shoulder changes the trajectory of a factory. A single screw bends, and the empire tilts. A single test missed, and the hierarchy shakes. Everything the grid hides behind PR now cracks open under one brutal fact. Ducati needs Marc more than Marc needs Ducati. Is this collapse the death of an empire's certainty, or the birth of another Marquez-era tyranny? Comment below. This injury does not weaken Marc, it centralizes him. His absence would cause more damage to Ducati than his injury. His presence, even at 90%, forces the grid to fight honestly. The 2026 season begins long before Qatar. It begins in Sepang, in a rehab room, in a shoulder that refuses to break fully, in a man who refuses to allow time, pain, or screws to steal his leverage. Marc doesn't chase titles anymore. He chases eras. And Ducati's era cannot begin without him. From now, where does this put them? The time will tell us. Comment below. Subscribe for more savage breakdowns.